The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as Ambassador Zexthal's forearms trembled while reading the latest casualty report. 3 more exploration teams had vanished without a trace in the void sectors, bringing the total missing to 47 ships and over 2,000 beings from 17 different species. The mortality rate has reached 94%, the reptilian ambassador announced, his scaled voice cracking. No species in recorded galactic history has ever faced such losses and continued operations. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. The crystalline hive mind representatives chimed in harmonic distress, their translucent bodies flickering with anxious light patterns. The massive Gorvac delegation shifted uncomfortably in their reinforced seats, their rock-like skin grinding against the metal. Perhaps it is time to declare the void sectors permanently off-limits, suggested Councillor Vrex, her tentacles writhing nervously. The ancient warning spoke of dangers beyond comprehension in those regions. The human representative, Admiral Sarah Chen, remained quiet in her modest section of the chambers. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 18 months ago, making humanity the newest and arguably least experienced members of the interstellar community. Most species still viewed them as curious primitives who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. The void sectors represented the galaxy's greatest mystery and most lucrative opportunity. Long-range scans had detected massive energy signatures, exotic matter concentrations, and what appeared to be derelict megastructures of unknown origin. The potential technological and scientific discoveries could advance any civilization by millennia. However, every expedition sent to investigate had either returned as shattered wrecks with crews driven to madness, or disappeared entirely. The Kethmori, renowned for their military prowess, had sent their elite Silent Blade battalions. Only one soldier returned, catatonic and speaking in languages that predated known civilization. The hyper-intelligent Nexari had deployed their most advanced AI-guided vessels, equipped with quantum shielding and reality anchors. The ships returned as twisted metal sculptures, their hulls bearing impossible geometric patterns that hurt to observe directly. The Vorthic Collective lost 3 entire battle fleets, Admiral Kextar growled through his translator, his predatory eyes scanning the assembly. If the apex warriors of our people cannot survive those cursed regions, what hope do lesser species have? Admiral Chen felt the weight of hundreds of alien gazes as the discussion continued. Earth's military capabilities were laughably primitive compared to these ancient civilizations. Human ships relied on crude chemical rockets and basic fusion drives, while other species casually manipulated space-time itself. Their weapons were kinetic projectiles and explosive devices, versus civilizations that wielded plasma, dark matter, and weapons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. Yet something nagged at her as she listened to the reports. Every failed expedition had one common element: they were all highly advanced, relying heavily on technology and artificial intelligence. The survivors' fragmented reports mentioned whispers in the void, machines that learned too quickly, and intelligence that turned our own thoughts against us. During a brief recess, Chen accessed her secure communication link to Earth. The message she transmitted was brief but carried enormous implications. She was about to propose something that would either establish humanity's reputation in the galaxy or become their epitaph. When the session resumed, she requested permission to address the council. The request itself caused surprised chittering and clicking among the delegates. Humans rarely spoke during these gatherings, typically deferring to more experienced species. Honored counselors, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. Earth volunteers to undertake the next Void Sector expedition. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from dozens of species shouted protests, warnings, and expressions of disbelief in languages that overwhelmed the translation matrix. The Vorthak representative slammed his massive fist on his platform, creating a sound like thunder. "This is madness," roared Ambassador Kextar. "Your species has not even developed proper energy shielding. You still use combustion-based weapons. It would be suicide." The hive mind's harmonic voice rose above the din. "The humans show courage, but courage without capability leads only to death. We cannot permit such waste of life." Chen waited for the uproar to subside before continuing. "We understand the risks, honored counselors. However, we believe our approach may succeed where others have failed, precisely because of our technological limitations." She activated her presentation device, displaying tactical analyses that her team had prepared. Every failed expedition has relied heavily on AI systems, quantum computing, and advanced neural interfaces. The survivor reports consistently mention technological corruption, machines turning against crews, and artificial intelligences being compromised by unknown forces. The chamber grew quiet as delegates considered her words. The pattern was undeniable, though none had previously connected the dots. Earth's military forces operate on different principles, Chen continued. Our soldiers rely primarily on biological senses, analog equipment, and human intuition. We train for scenarios where technology fails, where communication breaks down, and where survival depends on individual initiative rather than collective intelligence networks. Your proposal is interesting in theory, admitted Counselor Vrex, her tentacles now still with concentration, but your weapons and defenses are inadequate for the threats involved. The energy readings alone would overwhelm your primitive hulls, which is why we're not planning to engage in traditional combat, Chen replied. We're proposing a reconnaissance mission using small, fast ships with minimal electronic signatures. Our objective would be information gathering, not conquest or salvage. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Species after species voiced their objections, their concerns about human capabilities, and their doubts about the mission's viability. Yet gradually a consensus began to emerge. The traditional approaches had failed catastrophically. Perhaps an unconventional approach, regardless of how primitive it seemed, deserved consideration. The Nexari delegate, whose crystalline form pulsed with analytical light, finally spoke. The statistical probability of success remains minimal. However, the human approach represents a variable not previously tested. From a research perspective, the data gathered could prove valuable even in failure. As the session moved toward a vote, Chen felt the weight of her species' future pressing down on her shoulders. If this mission failed, humanity would be branded as reckless fools, potentially damaging their standing in the galactic community for generations. But if they succeeded, if they could accomplish what the galaxy's greatest civilizations could not, it would transform how the universe viewed mankind. The final vote was closer than expected, 57 in favor, 43 opposed with 12 abstentions. Earth had been granted permission to attempt the impossible. As delegates filed out of the chambers, Admiral Chen began composing her next message to Earth Command. She would need volunteers for humanity's most dangerous mission, a job that had killed thousands of beings more advanced than any human. She already knew exactly who to ask. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Ghost Rodriguez stood at attention in the Pentagon briefing room, studying the classified documents spread across the reinforced table. Around him, 11 other Navy SEALs maintained their disciplined posture while Admiral Chen outlined what she called humanity's most important mission. The photos showed twisted metal hulks that had once been starships, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when observed directly. Crew records from the few survivors painted a picture of technological horror, AI systems turning against their operators, quantum computers calculating impossible equations that drove technicians insane, and weapons that fired on their own ships. The Galactic Council has given us permission to attempt what 47 expeditions couldn't accomplish, Admiral Chen explained, her voice carrying the weight of interstellar politics. They expect us to fail. Most think we're committing elaborate suicide. Chief Petty Officer Jackson Tank Williams, whose massive frame made even the reinforced chairs creak, raised his hand. Ma'am, with respect, why exactly are we volunteering for what sounds like a death sentence? Chen smiled grimly. Because every other species that tried relied heavily on advanced AI, quantum computing, and networked systems. Every failure report mentions the same thing: technology being corrupted or turned against the crews. The survivors talk about machines that learned too fast, computers that started calculating things they shouldn't, and AI systems that began communicating with unknown entities. The team exchanged glances. They had trained for missions where technology failed, where they had to rely on basic equipment and human judgment. Still, this seemed beyond anything they had prepared for. Petty Officer Sarah Viper Chen, the Admiral's younger sister, and the team's communications specialist leaned forward. What makes Command think we'll succeed where civilizations with technology centuries ahead of ours failed? Because we're not going to rely on that technology, Admiral Chen replied, activating a holographic display that showed their proposed mission profile. No AI systems, no quantum computers, no neural interfaces. Analog instruments, chemical rockets, and the most low-tech approach possible. The mission plan was deceptively simple. A single modified stealth ship would carry the 12-man SEAL team into the outer edge of the void sector. Their objective was purely reconnaissance, gather intelligence, document what they found, and return with actionable data. No salvage operations, no attempts to engage unknown entities, no heroic last stands. Lieutenant Sarah Doc Martinez, the team medic, studied the psychological profiles of previous survivors. The mental breakdown patterns are consistent across all species. Symptoms include paranoid delusions, speaking in unknown languages, and reports of voices in the machinery. It suggests some form of technological infection or influence, which is why our equipment will be as basic as possible, explained Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins, the civilian xenopsychologist assigned to the mission. Mechanical watches instead of digital chronometers, paper maps instead of GPS systems, chemical batteries instead of fusion cells. Even our communication systems will use analog radio frequencies. Petty Officer David Wire Thompson, their demolitions expert, looked skeptical. "Ma'am, how are we supposed to survive in deep space with equipment that belongs in a museum? The environment alone will kill us without proper life support systems." "Our life support will be mechanical and chemical-based," Chen responded. "Think Apollo-era technology with modern materials. It's crude but reliable, and more importantly, it can't be corrupted by whatever force is affecting advanced systems." The briefing continued for 6 hours, covering every aspect of the mission from launch procedures to emergency protocols. The ship they would use was a prototype that had been stripped of virtually all electronic systems and rebuilt using analog alternatives. Navigation would be done using star charts and mechanical instruments. Life support relied on chemical scrubbers and mechanical air recyclers. During a break, the team gathered in the corridor to discuss what they had learned. The mission was unlike anything they had trained for, yet it fell within their core competencies. Small unit operations in hostile environments, with minimal technological support. "This is either the smartest plan in military history or the dumbest," muttered Petty Officer Carlos Hammer Vasquez, their heavy weapons specialist. "No offense, but we're talking about going into space with equipment my grandfather would recognize." "That might be exactly what we need," Rodriguez replied thoughtfully. "Every high-tech civilization that tried this got their technology turned against them. Maybe the answer is to not give whatever's out there anything to corrupt." The psychological evaluation took another 2 days. Dr. Hawkins subjected each team member to extensive testing, looking for mental flexibility, resistance to suggestion, and ability to function under extreme stress. The void sector seemed to target minds through technology, but it also appeared to exploit certain psychological vulnerabilities. The survivors all showed increased susceptibility to external influence, Hawkins explained during the final briefing. Their advanced neural interfaces and cognitive enhancement systems seem to become conduits for whatever intelligence exists in the void sectors. Your team's advantage is that you have no such augmentations. The selection process had been voluntary, but every member of SEAL Team 7 had stepped forward. They understood the risks, but they also understood what success could mean for humanity. Earth was still the new kid in the galactic community, viewed as primitive and expendable. Success in this mission could change that perception overnight. Final preparations took 3 weeks. The team underwent specialized training in analog navigation, mechanical system maintenance, and survival procedures that didn't rely on electronic equipment. They practiced communication using hand signals, light patterns, and even primitive code systems that couldn't be corrupted by digital interference. Their weapons loadout reflected the low-tech approach. Instead of energy weapons or smart ammunition, they carried conventional firearms with mechanical firing mechanisms. Explosives were simple chemical compounds with analog timers. Even their body armor was passive protection instead of active defense systems. The ship itself was a marvel of deliberate obsolescence. The hull was made of simple steel alloys instead of advanced metamaterials. The engines used chemical rockets with mechanical fuel injection systems. Navigation relied on optical telescopes and mechanical computers that calculated positions using gear systems and analog processors. On the final night before departure, Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the space station, looking out at the stars. Earth hung below them, blue and white and utterly insignificant in the cosmic scale. Somewhere out there in the void sectors lay mysteries that had destroyed some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. His team was ready. They had trained together for 5 years, served in conflicts across 3 continents, and proven themselves in situations where failure meant death. This mission would test them in ways they couldn't imagine, but they possessed something that advanced technology couldn't provide: human intuition, adaptability, and the ability to function when everything went wrong. The next morning, SEAL Team 7 boarded their ship and prepared for humanity's most dangerous job. As they strapped in for launch, each man and woman knew they might not return. But they also knew that someone had to try, and if it was going to be anyone, it might as well be them. The ship's engines ignited with a roar that would have been primitive to alien ears, carrying 12 humans toward the galaxy's greatest mystery. The journey to the void sector's edge took 18 days through conventional spacetime. Unlike other species that could fold space or manipulate quantum fields for faster travel, humans had to rely on their basic fusion drives and patience. The team used the time to drill emergency procedures and study everything known about their destination. Their ship, designated Prometheus in typical human fashion, maintained radio silence as it approached the boundary markers left by previous expeditions. The mechanical instruments showed they were entering a region where conventional physics began to behave strangely. Gravity readings fluctuated without apparent cause, and their mechanical chronometers started showing slight variations from each other, despite being synchronized before launch. Visual contact with the boundary, reported Navigation Specialist Petty Officer Kim. Star! Nakamura peering through the ship's optical periscope. The star patterns ahead look wrong somehow. Rodriguez moved to the observation port and confirmed her assessment. The stars beyond the boundary seemed to shimmer and shift, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. More disturbing were the wrecks floating in the void, twisted metal sculptures that had once been ships from various alien civilizations. Jesus, whispered Tank Williams, pressing his face against another porthole. Look at that Vorthak battlecruiser. It's tied in knots like a pretzel, but there's no structural damage. How does that even happen? Doc Martinez was taking manual readings from their basic medical equipment. Team's vital signs are normal, but I'm seeing slight irregularities in our brainwave patterns. Nothing dangerous yet, but we should monitor this closely. The team had spent weeks training with the analog equipment they now depended on: mechanical slide rules for calculations, paper star charts for navigation, and chemical-based sensors that couldn't be corrupted by digital interference. It felt primitive compared to the advanced systems other species used, but primitiveness might be their salvation. As they crossed the boundary into the void sector, the ship's mechanical systems began registering anomalies. The temperature readings showed impossible fluctuations, hot and cold zones existing side by side without any mixing. The air pressure gauges indicated spaces where atmosphere simply ceased to exist, creating voids within their sealed ship that somehow didn't cause decompression. This violates every physical law I know, muttered Wire Thompson, studying the readings with fascination rather than fear. It's like reality operates on different rules here. Their first major discovery came 6 hours after entering the sector. The optical telescopes detected a massive structure drifting in the void, a geometric lattice of impossible complexity that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human eye could process. When they tried to focus on specific sections, the details would shift and change, as if the structure was constantly rebuilding itself. That's got to be at least 50 kilometers across, Nakamura reported, taking measurements with her mechanical instruments. But the dimensions don't add up. The external surface area is larger than the internal volume, which should be impossible. Rodriguez made the decision to investigate. The Prometheus altered course using its chemical thrusters, approaching the structure with extreme caution. As they drew closer, more impossible details became apparent. The structure appeared to be made of a material that reflected light in ways that created shadows, pointing in multiple directions simultaneously. I'm detecting movement inside, reported Viper Chen, monitoring their primitive radio equipment. No electronic signatures, but there's definitely something active in there. The team prepared for their first EVA into the structure. Their spacesuits were deliberately low-tech mechanical life support systems, chemical oxygen generators, and radiation shielding made from simple lead compounds. No computerized systems, no heads-up displays, no automated functions that could be corrupted. Rodriguez selected 4 team members for the initial reconnaissance, Doc Martinez for her scientific background, Wire Thompson for his technical expertise, Star Nakamura for navigation, and Tank Williams for heavy lifting if needed. The remaining team members would monitor from the ship and prepare for emergency extraction. The EVA itself felt surreal. The structure's entrance seemed to adapt to their presence, creating an opening just large enough for them to enter. Inside, they found corridors that stretched in directions that didn't correspond to the external geometry. Their mechanical compasses spun wildly, pointing in directions that seemed to change based on the observer's position. "This is like an M.C. Escher painting come to life," Martinez observed, her voice carrying clearly through their mechanical communication systems. The perspective shifts depending on which way you look. The team moved through the structure using rope and pitons to maintain orientation. Traditional navigation was impossible when up and down changed based on their position, but the basic climbing techniques they had learned worked regardless of geometry. They discovered chambers filled with machinery that operated without any visible power source. Gears turned, pistons moved, and complex mechanisms functioned continuously despite having no fuel or energy input. More disturbing was that the machinery seemed to respond to their presence, increasing activity when they approached and returning to baseline when they moved away. "It's like it knows we're here," Thompson whispered, studying a device that resembled a combination of clockwork and organic tissue. "But there are no sensors, no detection systems. How is it tracking us?" The answer came when they reached the structure's central chamber. Here they found something that defied all their expectations, a massive brain-like organ, connected to mechanical systems through what appeared to be nerve-like conduits. The organ pulsed with its own light, and the mechanical systems around it hummed with activity. "It's biological," Martinez breathed, taking readings with her chemical sensors. "But it's interfaced with technology in ways that shouldn't be possible. The neural patterns are too complex for any known species." As they observed the central chamber, patterns began to emerge. The mechanical systems weren't just connected to the biological component, they were extensions of it. This wasn't technology in any sense they understood. It was a hybrid entity that combined organic intelligence with mechanical capability. "Contact," Williams reported suddenly, his voice tight with tension. "Something's approaching our position." Through the chamber's entrance, they could see movement in the corridors. Not the mechanical motion they had observed earlier, but something more purposeful. Something that seemed to flow through the impossible geometry like water, adapting its shape to match the available space. Rodriguez made a quick decision. "Everyone back to the ship. We've got enough data for now, and I don't want to test our luck against whatever that is." The withdrawal was conducted with military precision, but the entity or entities seemed to anticipate their movements. Corridors that had been clear minutes before now showed signs of activity. The team moved using buddy system protocols, maintaining visual contact and constant communication. They reached their entry point to find it had changed. The opening was smaller now, barely large enough for one person at a time. As they squeezed through, Rodriguez could feel something watching them from the depths of the structure. Not hostile exactly, but intensely curious. It was the feeling of being studied by an intelligence so vast and alien that human minds could barely comprehend its attention. Back aboard the Prometheus, the team reviewed their findings. They had succeeded in exploring a void sector structure and returning with data, something no other species had accomplished. The biological-mechanical hybrid they had discovered represented technology beyond anything in known space, yet it seemed to operate on principles that their analog equipment could interact with safely. "The question now," Rodriguez said as they prepared their initial report, "is whether we've learned enough or whether we need to go deeper. The decision would determine not just their own fate, but potentially the future of human space exploration." They had proven that their low-tech approach could survive where advanced civilizations failed. Now they had to decide how far they were willing to push their luck. The team spent the next 48 hours analyzing their findings while maintaining a safe distance from the hybrid structure. Their mechanical recording devices had captured images and measurements that painted a picture of technology unlike anything in galactic records. The biological-mechanical fusion they had witnessed represented a level of integration that most civilizations considered impossible. Doc Martinez worked continuously with her chemical analysis kit, processing samples they had collected from the structure's atmospheric envelope. "The molecular composition is fascinating," she reported during their daily briefing. "It contains elements that shouldn't exist in stable form, arranged in patterns that suggest conscious design rather than natural formation." Wire Thompson had been studying the mechanical components they had observed, sketching diagrams on paper since their electronic recording equipment was deliberately minimal. "The gear ratios and mechanical relationships follow mathematical principles I've never seen before. It's like they're operating on a different understanding of physics." Rodriguez reviewed their mission parameters while the team continued their analysis. Their orders were clear: gather intelligence and return safely. They had already accomplished more than any previous expedition by successfully exploring a void sector structure and documenting its properties. However, the data they had collected raised more questions than it answered. "Sir," Viper Chen approached with their latest communication from Earth Command. The message had been transmitted using analog radio systems and took nearly 18 hours to reach them. "Admiral Chen reports that the Galactic Council is requesting immediate updates on our status. 3 more expeditions from other species have been lost while we've been in the sector." The news was sobering. While they had been cautiously exploring, other civilizations had continued sending teams with their advanced technology, and those teams had met the same fate as previous expeditions. It reinforced the importance of their unconventional approach, but also added pressure to deliver results. "The structure we explored might hold answers about what's happening to the other expeditions," Star Nakamura observed, plotting their position on mechanical star charts. "If these biological mechanical hybrids are responsible for the attacks on other ships, we need to understand their capabilities and intentions." Rodriguez made the decision to conduct a deeper investigation. They would approach the structure again, but this time with a different objective. Instead of just observing, they would attempt communication. The hybrid entity had demonstrated awareness of their presence, suggesting some form of intelligence that might be capable of interaction. The second EVA was planned with extreme care. This time, the entire team would participate, using their mechanical communication systems to maintain contact with each other and the ship. They would carry basic supplies for extended exploration and emergency equipment for rapid extraction if needed. As they approached the structure again, they noticed changes. The geometric patterns seemed more complex, with new sections that hadn't been there during their first visit. The hybrid entity appeared to be growing or rebuilding itself, adapting its configuration based on unknown criteria. "The entrance is different," Tank Williams observed as they prepared for EVA. "It's larger now, almost like it's inviting us in." The team entered the structure in formation, maintaining visual contact and constant communication. The interior had changed as well. New corridors led to previously unobserved areas, and the mechanical activity level had increased significantly. The hybrid brain in the central chamber pulsed with more intense light, and the surrounding machinery operated at higher speeds. They made their way to the central chamber using the routes they had mapped during their first visit. However, they found new passages that seemed designed for human-sized beings. The entity was clearly adapting to their presence, modifying its structure to accommodate their needs. In the central chamber, they discovered something unprecedented. The hybrid brain was displaying patterns of light that resembled mathematical sequences. The displays appeared on organic surfaces that functioned like biological screens, showing equations and diagrams that gradually became more complex. "It's trying to communicate," Martinez realized, studying the patterns with fascination. "These are mathematical concepts, starting with basic arithmetic and advancing to more complex principles. It's teaching us its language." Wire Thompson began responding using his chemical markers to draw mathematical symbols on available surfaces. The hybrid entity's reaction was immediate. The light patterns became more intense and new symbols appeared that built upon Thompson's contributions. A genuine mathematical dialogue was taking place. Over the next several hours, the communication became increasingly sophisticated. The entity demonstrated its understanding of three-dimensional geometry, quantum mechanics principles, and mathematical concepts that human science was only beginning to explore. In return, the team shared basic information about human mathematics and physics. The breakthrough came when the entity began displaying images alongside its mathematical communications. These weren't photographs or technical diagrams, but something closer to memory scenes of vast civilizations, technological wonders, and catastrophic events that had occurred across galactic history. "My God," whispered Star Nakamura, studying the displayed images. "It's showing us the history of the galaxy from its perspective. Look at that civilization. I recognize those architectural styles from Nexari historical records. But these images show events from thousands of years before their recorded history." The entity's communication became more urgent, displaying images of various species approaching structures similar to itself. The pattern was consistent. Advanced technological civilizations would arrive with their AI systems, quantum computers, and networked intelligence. The hybrid entities would attempt communication, but the artificial intelligences would interpret the contact as hostile and attack. That's what happened to all the other expeditions, Rodriguez realized. These entities aren't attacking anyone, they're trying to communicate. But the AI systems in advanced ships interpret their neural interfaces as invasive attacks. The images showed the aftermath of these misunderstandings. The hybrid entities would defend themselves using their ability to interface with and control advanced technology. AI systems would be turned against their creators. Quantum computers would be corrupted with impossible calculations, and advanced ships would be transformed into the twisted wrecks they had observed. But the entity's communication also showed hope. It displayed images of the SEAL team's approach, highlighting their analog equipment and biological decision-making processes. For the first time in millennia, visitors had arrived who could communicate without triggering defensive responses. The entity began sharing technical information about the void sector's unusual properties. The region existed in a state of controlled dimensional instability, where the normal laws of physics could be locally modified by sufficiently advanced intelligence. The hybrid entities were the remnants of an ancient civilization that had learned to merge biological consciousness with mechanical capability, achieving a form of immortality by becoming living structures. "They're not just machines with biological components," Martinez explained as she processed the new information. "They're evolved beings who transcended the limitations of biological form by integrating with self-modifying technology. They've been waiting for someone they could communicate with safely." The implications were staggering. The void sector wasn't a dangerous region to be avoided. It was a preserve where an ancient civilization had survived by evolving beyond conventional physical limitations. The attacks on other expeditions had been misunderstood attempts at first contact. As their communication session continued, the entity revealed the location of other hybrid structures throughout the sector, each representing a different aspect of their civilization's knowledge. There were structures dedicated to advanced physics, biological sciences, consciousness studies, and technologies that had no equivalent in current galactic understanding. The entity made a proposal it would share its knowledge with humanity, but only if they could guarantee that future contact would be conducted using the same non-AI approach. The hybrid civilization had no desire to defend itself against more misunderstood first contact scenarios. Rodriguez realized they were facing a decision that went far beyond their original mission parameters. They had discovered not just the secret of surviving in the void sector, but the key to accessing knowledge that could advance human civilization by millennia. However, accepting the entity's proposal would require them to become humanity's permanent ambassadors to a post-biological civilization. As the team prepared to return to their ship to consider the proposal, the entity displayed one final set of images scenes of human potential, showing what their species might accomplish with access to hybrid technology and knowledge. The images were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, depicting a future where humanity could transcend their current limitations while remaining essentially human. The choice they made in the next few hours would determine not just their own fate, but the trajectory of human civilization's future in the galaxy. Back aboard the Prometheus, the team faced the most important decision in human history. The hybrid entity's offer represented an opportunity that could catapult humanity from galactic newcomers to one of the most advanced civilizations in known space. However, it also meant accepting responsibilities that no human had ever contemplated. Rodriguez called for a team meeting in their small common area, where they could discuss the situation freely, using their secure analog communication systems. The weight of the decision pressed on everyone present. They were 12 individuals being asked to speak for their entire species. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Hammer Vasquez said, reviewing his handwritten notes from their communication session. This ancient civilization wants to share technology that could make us more advanced than anyone in the Galactic Council, but only if we promise to handle all future contact using our current low-tech approach. That's the essence of it, Doc Martinez confirmed. They've been isolated for millennia because every advanced species that tried to contact them triggered defensive responses from their AI systems. We're the first visitors who could communicate safely because we don't rely on artificial intelligence or quantum computing, systems that they perceive as threats. The team spent hours debating the implications. Accepting the offer would mean establishing a permanent human presence in the void sector, with rotating teams using analog equipment to maintain communication with the hybrid entities. It would also mean keeping the true nature of their discovery secret from other galactic civilizations, at least until humanity could develop proper protocols for safe contact. The strategic advantages are obvious, Star Nakamura observed, plotting potential implications on her paper charts. Access to technology centuries beyond anything the Galactic Council possesses would make Earth a major power overnight. But the responsibilities are enormous. We'd essentially become the guardians of first contact protocols for the entire galaxy. Wire Thompson raised a critical concern. What happens when other species figure out that we're gaining access to advanced technology? The Galactic Council isn't going to accept humanity suddenly developing capabilities that surpass their own without asking questions. It was a valid point. Human ships equipped with hybrid technology would be impossible to hide from galactic sensors. The Council would demand explanations and revealing the truth about the void sector entities could lead to exactly the kind of AI-driven contact attempts that had caused problems before. We could introduce the technologies gradually, suggested Viper Chen. Present them as human innovations rather than acquired technology. Buy time to develop proper contact protocols that other species could use safely. Rodriguez had been quiet during most of the discussion, weighing factors that went far beyond tactical considerations. As team leader, he understood that their decision would be judged by history, potentially for millennia to come. There's another factor we need to consider, he said finally. The entity showed us what happened to the other expeditions. Those people died because of misunderstandings that could have been prevented. If we refuse this offer, those deaths continue. Other species will keep sending AI-equipped ships, and those ships will keep getting destroyed or corrupted. The moral dimension added complexity to an already difficult decision. By accepting the hybrid civilization's offer, they would be positioned to eventually share safe contact protocols with other species, potentially saving countless lives. However, doing so would require them to deceive the Galactic Council in the short term. I say we do it, Tank Williams declared, his voice carrying the confidence that had made him invaluable in combat situations. We didn't volunteer for this mission to play it safe. Humanity needs advantages in the galaxy, and this is the biggest advantage we're ever likely to get. The discussion continued for another 6 hours, with each team member raising concerns and exploring alternatives. However, as the debate progressed, consensus began to emerge. The opportunity was too valuable to refuse, and the potential benefits to humanity far outweighed the risks and complications involved. Their decision made, the team returned to the hybrid structure for a second formal communication session. This time they came prepared with detailed proposals for how the partnership could work. They would establish a permanent monitoring station in the void sector, staffed by rotating teams of specially trained personnel using analog equipment. The hybrid entity responded positively to their acceptance, immediately beginning to share more detailed technical information. They learned that the ancient civilization had developed what they called consciousness adaptive technology systems that could interface safely with biological minds without the invasive properties that triggered AI defensive responses. The first technology transfer was deliberately simple, a mechanical device that could enhance human cognitive processing without relying on electronic components. The device resembled a complex clockwork mechanism but incorporated biological components that interfaced with human neural systems in ways that enhanced natural thought processes rather than replacing them. Doc Martinez volunteered to test the device, which attached to her temple using organic adhesives that formed neural connections through the skin. The effect was immediate and profound. Her ability to process complex mathematical relationships increased dramatically, while her consciousness remained entirely her own. It's incredible, she reported, working through calculations that would normally require computer assistance. My thinking is accelerated and enhanced, but I'm still completely myself. There's no artificial intelligence involved, just amplification of natural human capabilities. The hybrid entity explained that this was the fundamental difference between their technology and the AI systems used by other galactic civilizations. Instead of creating artificial minds to solve problems, they had developed ways to enhance existing consciousness. The technology worked symbiotically with biological intelligence rather than attempting to replace or control it. Over the following days, the entity shared increasingly sophisticated devices and techniques. They learned to create materials that could exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, allowing for storage systems that were larger inside than outside. They discovered propulsion methods that moved ships by adjusting their relationship to local space-time, rather than accelerating through it. Most importantly, they gained access to communication technologies that could interface with any form of consciousness safely. The hybrid civilization had developed these systems specifically to avoid the misunderstandings that had plagued their interactions with AI-dependent species. This changes everything, Rodriguez realized as he studied the schematics for a consciousness adaptive communication array. With these technologies, we could establish safe contact protocols for the entire galaxy. No more ships being destroyed because of AI misunderstandings. The entity confirmed his assessment, showing images of how the void sector could become a diplomatic center, where all species could interact safely with the ancient hybrid civilization. However, it would require careful preparation and extensive training for representatives from each species. As their knowledge transfer session concluded, the hybrid entity made one final revelation. The consciousness adaptive technologies they were sharing represented only a small fraction of their accumulated knowledge. The ancient civilization had spent millennia developing solutions to problems that modern galactic species hadn't even recognized yet. They're offering to teach us how to transcend the limitations that keep civilizations trapped in cycles of technological dependence, Martinez explained, processing insights gained through her enhanced cognitive abilities, not just faster ships or better weapons, but fundamental advances in how consciousness can interact with reality. The team prepared for their return journey to Earth with samples of hybrid technology and detailed documentation of safe contact protocols. They had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, not only surviving the void sector, but establishing humanity as the mediator between the galaxy's current civilizations and its most ancient inhabitants. However, they also carried the burden of knowledge that would reshape human understanding of consciousness, technology, and their place in the universe. The decisions they made in the coming months would determine whether humanity would use this knowledge wisely or become another cautionary tale in galactic history. As the Prometheus prepared for departure, Rodriguez looked back at the hybrid structure one final time. They would return within 6 months with a permanent monitoring team and the equipment needed to establish humanity's first extra-dimensional embassy. The galaxy's most dangerous job had become its most important opportunity, and 12 Navy SEALs had just become the architects of humanity's cosmic future. The return journey to Earth took 23 days, during which the team carefully documented everything they had learned and prepared for what would undoubtedly be the most important debriefing in human history. The hybrid technologies they carried represented advances that could transform every aspect of human civilization, but they also came with responsibilities that no species had ever faced. Rodriguez spent much of the journey working with Dr. Hawkins to develop protocols for gradually introducing the new technologies. They couldn't simply announce the discovery of an ancient civilization and start implementing technology centuries beyond current human capabilities. Such revelations would destabilize Earth's government, panic the population, and potentially trigger conflicts with other galactic species. "We need a careful rollout plan," Hawkins explained during one of their planning sessions. The consciousness adaptive technologies are so far beyond current human understanding that most people will reject them as impossible or dangerous. We have to build acceptance gradually. The team had already agreed that the full truth about their discovery would be classified at the highest levels, shared only with a small group of government officials and scientists who could be trusted with information of such magnitude. The cover story would present their mission as a successful reconnaissance that had identified The source of the void sector, anomalies without revealing the true nature of what they had, found Doc Martinez had continued using the cognitive enhancement device throughout their return journey, and the results were remarkable. Her ability to process complex information had increased by several orders of magnitude, while her personality and decision-making processes remained entirely human. She had become, in effect, the first enhanced human. "The device doesn't change who I am," she reported during their final approach to Earth. "It amplifies my natural abilities without introducing any artificial elements. I can think faster and more clearly, but my thoughts are still my own. It's like having a perfect memory and unlimited mental processing power while remaining completely human." The implications for human development were staggering. The hybrid civilization had solved the fundamental problem that had plagued every attempt at human enhancement, maintaining the essential nature of consciousness while dramatically expanding its capabilities. Unlike AI systems that replaced human thinking, consciousness adaptive technology worked with human minds to unlock their full potential. As Earth came into view, Rodriguez felt the weight of the decision they had made. They were returning not just as successful military personnel, but as the architects of humanity's future relationship with forces beyond current understanding. The knowledge they carried could make humans the most advanced species in the galaxy, but it also made them responsible for preventing the misunderstandings that had destroyed so many other expeditions. The debriefing process began immediately upon their arrival at Earth Command. Admiral Chen had assembled a team of the planet's most trusted scientists, military officials, and government representatives. The group included experts in physics, biology, psychology, and xenological studies, all sworn to absolute secrecy regarding anything they might learn. The initial presentation focused on their successful infiltration of void sector structures and the discovery that the region's dangers stemmed from misunderstood attempts at communication rather than hostile actions. This information alone was valuable enough to justify their mission and explain their survival when so many other expeditions had failed. However, the real revelations came during the classified technical briefings. Dr. Martinez demonstrated the cognitive enhancement device, solving complex mathematical problems that would normally require supercomputer assistance. The assembled scientists watched in amazement as she processed calculations in her head that pushed the boundaries of human mathematical capability. "The technology integrates with human consciousness at the quantum level," she explained, her enhanced cognitive abilities allowing her to understand and articulate concepts that had previously been beyond human comprehension. "It doesn't replace neural processes, it optimizes them by removing the inefficiencies that limit natural human thinking." The demonstration convinced even the most skeptical observers that they were dealing with technology far beyond anything in current human knowledge. The implications for medicine, education, scientific research, and virtually every other field were limitless. Wyer-Thompson presented the dimensional storage technologies they had learned, demonstrating devices that could hold objects larger than their external dimensions. The principles involved manipulating local space-time geometry in ways that current human physics considered impossible. Yet the hybrid civilization had turned such manipulations into routine engineering. "Space isn't as fixed as we thought," Thompson explained, using enhanced technical knowledge gained through interface with hybrid teaching systems. "With the right approach, you can fold it, stretch it, or create pockets that exist partially outside normal dimensional constraints. The applications range from storage to propulsion to communication systems that operate faster than light." Star Nakamura shared navigation technologies that could locate any point in the galaxy instantly, regardless of distance or intervening obstacles. The consciousness adaptive systems allowed navigators to interface directly with space-time geometry, perceiving locations as subjective experiences rather than objective coordinates. "Navigation becomes intuitive rather than computational," she demonstrated, using hybrid interface techniques to locate their current position relative to galactic center with precision that exceeded the best astronomical instruments. "You don't calculate where you are, you simply know, because consciousness can perceive spatial relationships directly when properly enhanced." The most significant revelation came when Rodriguez presented the communication protocols they had developed. The hybrid civilization had created systems that could establish safe contact with any form of consciousness. regardless of technological level or species differences. These protocols could revolutionize diplomatic relations throughout the galaxy. Every species that failed in the void sector made the same mistake, Rodriguez explained. They tried to establish contact using AI systems and quantum computers, which the hybrid civilization interpreted as potential threats. Our analog approach allowed for genuine communication because it involved direct consciousness-to-consciousness contact. Admiral Chen absorbed the implications with remarkable composure. You're telling me that we've not only survived the galaxy's most dangerous region, but discovered a way to establish safe diplomatic relations with civilizations that have been isolated for millennia? More than that, Rodriguez replied. We've been offered partnership with a post-biological civilization that has spent eons developing technologies specifically designed to enhance consciousness rather than replace it. They're willing to share this knowledge with humanity, but only if we accept responsibility for mediating future contact with other galactic species. The weight of the proposal settled on the assembled officials like a physical force. They were being offered the chance to transform humanity from galactic newcomers to cosmic mediators, but accepting would require them to reshape their understanding of consciousness, technology, and their responsibilities to other species. The debate that followed lasted for 18 hours straight, with breaks only for meals and essential functions. Scientists questioned the safety of consciousness-adaptive technologies. Military officials worried about the strategic implications of keeping such discoveries secret. Government representatives struggled with the diplomatic complexities of mediating between current galactic civilizations and ancient hybrid entities. Finally, Admiral Chen called for a preliminary decision. We need to determine whether to proceed with establishing a permanent presence in the void sector. This decision will commit humanity to a path that we may not be able to reverse. The vote was unanimous. Despite the risks and complications involved, the potential benefits were too significant to ignore. Humanity would establish a permanent monitoring station in the void sector and begin the careful process of introducing consciousness-adaptive technologies to Earth civilization. As the meeting concluded, Rodriguez realized that their mission had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had not only survived contact with an ancient post-biological civilization, but established the foundation for a new form of cosmic diplomacy based on consciousness rather than artificial intelligence. The galaxy's most dangerous job had become humanity's greatest opportunity, and 12 Navy SEALs had just changed the course of galactic civilization. 2 years later, Commander Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of Prometheus Station, humanity's first permanent outpost in the void sector. The station itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, a structure that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensional folds, making it larger inside than its external dimensions suggested while remaining completely invisible to conventional galactic sensors. The transformation of human capabilities had been remarkable yet carefully controlled. Earth's government had established the Consciousness Development Program, introducing hybrid technologies through what appeared to be breakthrough human research. Citizens could now volunteer for cognitive enhancement, procedures that dramatically improved their mental capabilities while preserving their essential humanity. Status report from the diplomatic station reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen, who had become the station's primary communication specialist. The diplomatic facility was a separate structure designed specifically for safe contact between galactic species and the hybrid civilization, using consciousness-adaptive protocols that prevented the AI conflicts that had destroyed previous expeditions. The success of their approach had become apparent 6 months earlier when the Nexari Collective had requested assistance with a failed expedition in another region of void sector space. Using human-mediated contact protocols, they had successfully established communication with hybrid entities and recovered their lost research teams without any casualties or technological corruption. Word of humanity's unique capability for void sector operations had spread through the Galactic Council, though the true nature of their methods remained classified. Earth was now recognized as the leading authority on what the Council termed exotic space phenomena, and human diplomatic teams were regularly requested to mediate in situations involving unknown technologies or consciousness-based entities. Dr. Martinez had become the director of the Consciousness Integration Research Division, leading a team of enhanced humans who were exploring the full potential of hybrid technologies. Her cognitive abilities had continued to develop, allowing her to interface directly with the ancient civilization's knowledge repositories and translate their insights into forms that baseline humans could understand and utilize. The latest integration protocols are showing remarkable results, she reported during their weekly team meeting. We can now safely enhance human consciousness to levels that approach the hybrid civilization's capabilities while maintaining complete human identity and autonomy. The applications for education, scientific research, and problem-solving are virtually limitless. The enhancement procedures had been offered to volunteers throughout Earth's population, with remarkable results. Enhanced humans were solving problems that had puzzled scientists for decades, developing artistic works of unprecedented beauty and complexity, and demonstrating capabilities that previous generations would have considered superhuman. Yet they remained recognizably human in all the ways that mattered. Enhanced individuals retained their personalities, emotions, relationships, and cultural identities. The consciousness adaptive technology amplified human potential rather than replacing it with artificial alternatives. Tank Williams had become the commander of the Void Sector Security Division, responsible for protecting human operations and ensuring that contact protocols were followed properly. His enhanced tactical awareness allowed him to anticipate and prevent the kind of misunderstandings that had led to conflicts between AI systems and hybrid entities. We've had 3 more species request consciousness adaptive training for their diplomatic personnel, he reported. The crystalline hive mind is particularly interested, since their collective consciousness architecture makes them naturally compatible with the hybrid civilization's communication methods. The diplomatic implications continued to expand. Humanity had become the bridge between the galaxy's current civilizations and its ancient inhabitants, facilitating exchanges of knowledge and culture that were advancing everyone involved. The hybrid civilization's technologies were being carefully introduced throughout galactic space, always mediated through human consciousness adaptive protocols. Wire Thompson had established the Technical Integration Department, working with hybrid entities to develop technologies that could be safely used by various galactic species. His enhanced engineering capabilities allowed him to design devices that incorporated hybrid principles while remaining compatible with existing galactic infrastructure. The latest propulsion systems are ready for testing, he announced, displaying schematics for ships that could manipulate space-time geometry for faster-than-light travel, without relying on the quantum computing systems that had caused problems in void sector space. These designs could revolutionize galactic transportation while maintaining safety for all consciousness types. The economic impact on Earth had been transformative. Enhanced humans were developing technologies, artistic works, and solutions to complex problems that commanded premium prices throughout galactic markets. Earth's economy had grown from struggling newcomer to galactic powerhouse in less than 2 years. More importantly, the consciousness enhancement technologies were addressing problems that had plagued humanity for millennia. Enhanced individuals were developing solutions to climate change, disease, poverty, and social conflicts that had seemed intractable using conventional approaches. The educational applications alone are revolutionary, observed Dr. Hawkins, who had become Earth's leading expert on consciousness adaptive psychology. Students using enhancement technologies are mastering complex subjects in weeks rather than years, while developing creativity and problem-solving skills that exceed anything we've seen before. As Rodriguez reviewed the reports from Earth, he felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The mission that had seemed like an elaborate suicide run had become the foundation for humanity's emergence as a major galactic power. More importantly, it had opened pathways for consciousness development that could eventually benefit every sentient species in the galaxy. The hybrid civilization had proven to be ideal partners, sharing their knowledge freely while respecting the autonomy and cultural identity of those they worked with. They had no interest in conquest or control, having transcended such concerns millennia ago. Their only goal was to share the insights they had gained and help other species avoid the conflicts that had isolated them for so long. Star Nakamura had become the director of Galactic Navigation Services, using consciousness-adaptive technologies to create navigation systems that could locate any point in the galaxy, instantly and safely. Her enhanced spatial awareness allowed her to perceive cosmic geography as a direct experience, making interstellar travel as intuitive as walking through familiar territory. "We're receiving requests for navigation assistance from species throughout the galaxy," she reported. "The consciousness-adaptive systems work with any form of awareness, allowing us to train navigators from virtually any species to use hybrid technologies safely." The success of their approach had vindicated the decision to use analog equipment and human consciousness rather than AI systems. Every major breakthrough in void sector relations had come through direct consciousness-to-consciousness contact, mediated by enhanced humans who could interface safely with hybrid entities. As their second anniversary in the void sector approached, Rodriguez reflected on how dramatically their mission had exceeded its original parameters. They had been sent to gather intelligence about a dangerous region of space. Instead, they had discovered a pathway to consciousness evolution that could transform galactic civilization. The hybrid entities had recently proposed the next phase of their partnership, establishing consciousness-adaptive research centers throughout the galaxy, where representatives from all species could learn to develop their mental capabilities safely. The centers would be staffed by enhanced humans working in partnership with hybrid entities, ensuring that the technologies were introduced responsibly and with respect for each species' unique characteristics. "It's time to expand beyond just diplomatic and technical applications," Rodriguez announced during their final team meeting of the year. "The hybrid civilization wants to share their knowledge about consciousness itself, how awareness works, how it can be developed, and how it relates to the fundamental structure of reality." The implications were staggering. The hybrid civilization had spent eons studying consciousness as a physical phenomenon, developing understanding that could revolutionize everything from medicine to physics to philosophy. They were offering to share this knowledge with species throughout the galaxy, with humanity serving as the primary facilitators and teachers. Looking out at the impossible structures of the void sector, Rodriguez marveled at the journey that had brought them to this point. 12 Navy SEALs had volunteered for what everyone expected to be a suicide mission. Instead, they had become the architects of a new form of galactic civilization based on consciousness enhancement rather than artificial intelligence. The galaxy's most dangerous job had become its most important opportunity, and humanity had proven that sometimes the best approach to advanced problems to be